Any player that touches the field in a football game is vitally important to that football team's success. It trickles down from the backups to the special teams to the starters to your quarterback to your receivers to your D-line. Every position plays a vital role. Every player plays a vital role. It's like cogs in a machine. Everything needs to be well oiled and work together for the machine to go. Now there are a few cogs in the machine that is Texas A&M football that are a little bit more questionable than others. For instance, we know the receiver group can produce. We know this D-line is uber talented. But who are some individuals that are kind of swing players on the season? Players whose performance will make or break Texas A&M's success as a whole in 2023. That's a lot to put on a young player. That's a lot to put on several young players. But I'm going to do that for the sake of argument. These are players that need to have either major steps up or breakout years for Texas A&M to live up to its potential in 2023. So if you haven't been following along, I am doing daily A&M videos throughout the month of fall camp, getting us primed for the season, talking about various storylines and topics that are important to predicting and understanding what Texas A&M football is in 2023. The first two videos were about major strengths on the team and major question marks on the team. They were kind of general areas of concern, general areas of strength. The receivers, that room in general is a strength. The offensive line, that room in general is a question mark. Now when I say strength, that is something that we can pretty much rest easy on in knowing that they're going to become successful, specifically early in the year. Because anybody can develop over the span of the year, but sometimes that's too late. Those were known commodities. Now the question marks, those are position groups and areas on the team that we need to see that next step taken with. Now I'm going to get specific with some of those. And maybe some of these players are in the areas of strength that need to pan out to make this team take it to the next level. So starting off with the area I'm probably going to be talking about the most throughout these videos, the offensive line. Now, I could probably put every player on the offensive line on this list because every player that played last year either had a down year or got hurt. But I'm going to single out the most important player to an offensive line, arguably, because you could say the left tackle is the most important. Maybe I'll throw him on this list too, but it's the center, Bryce Foster. Bryce is an undeniable specimen, freak of nature, physical force, and awesome football player. We saw it his freshman year. We definitely saw the potential in high school. We know what he is. We know what he can be. I think it's pretty clear what Bryce Foster can be. Unfortunately, he had a rough 2022, on the field and off the field. So off the field, he missed fall camp because of illness. He got sick, didn't participate in fall camp. Now that sucks, but what makes that even worse is that he doesn't participate in spring because he is in track and field. Specifically field. I don't think he's running the 400. Could be wrong. Yeah, he does shot put in spring, which is totally understandable. That's awesome. I'm glad he's representing our university in that way, and he's able to compete. That's amazing. So there's no complaints there. But the fact that he doesn't go to spring and he missed fall put him way behind on the year. Took him a few games to get into the rhythm. I don't think he started the first game of the year. I don't even think he played the first couple games of the year. But he finally started playing. He finally started. And just as he was getting his wits about him, just as he was starting to look like Bryce Foster that we expected, he got injured for the year. So a really rough year last year, on and off the field. Now, it's no secret that the center is the main communication point for the offensive line. The center is typically making calls at the line, to the line, every play of the game, highlighting linebackers, blitzers, mics, all sorts of things. He's the voice of the O-line, and every player on the O-line makes a call at the line, but I think the center is kind of the most instrumental in that regard. So the communication there, the chemistry there, it's all vitally important. And when you have turnover there, you have different players in and out. And obviously you can say this about any position, but specifically at center, such an anchor point of communication on a football team, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt when you have several guys coming in and out. It's going to hurt when your main guy misses all of camp. So first and foremost, we hope and pray that he gets healthy and remains healthy. You can say that about anything, but we really hope that he is able to continue with the trajectory we would expect from a player like that. We need Bryce Foster to become the all-SEC type of player that we've always thought he could be. Because your offensive line will never be what it can be if the center does not pan out. So Bryce Foster is one of those players we're going to be looking at as kind of a litmus test for the season. Because if we look at in November, after the regular season's done, if Bryce Foster had a good year, if we're really happy with his performance and his trajectory, I would wager that Texas A&M was at least a 10-win team. If Bryce Foster had a great year, Texas A&M was probably a 10-win team. That's how important that position group and that player, that position itself, is to Texas A&M. So I think it's all the offensive line, but I'm really just making Bryce kind of like the leader and the representation of that position group for the sake of this argument. We really need him to have that kind of a breakout year. And I mentioned left tackle briefly. Ruben Fothery playing left tackle now. As I've mentioned before, I don't think he had the year we would have expected him to have after the glimpses we saw his freshman year. They say the sophomore slump's a real thing. We'll find out. I expect a big step forward from Ruben Fothery, and I think this team really needs that too. They need it from the whole O-line. But I'm just singling out these two guys because I think they're that good, and they can be that good. All right, now the next guy that I want to highlight for y'all. Now, this is a guy that's in actually one of my position groups of strength. I lumped receivers and tight ends into an area of strength for this team. Now, this is a name that we have been talking about since he got here. He played a lot last year, specifically late in the year, but he didn't really have any major receptions. He didn't really get involved playmaking on offense, and that is Jake Johnson. We know what Donovan Green, the good Aggie, is, and he scored a lot of touchdowns last year. He got a lot of receptions. He was very much involved in the passing game. We saw a bit of Jake Johnson in the blocking game, and that was good. But I think we really want to see that second tight end get his hands on balls to the level that Donovan Green was. Because, I think Donovan's going to get more of the looks as the primary target for the tight end room. But I think Jake Johnson is that next athletic catch-and-run type of tight end that Texas A&M can attack with and have two of those types of guys on either side of the offensive line. I think Jake could have a huge year because we know exactly how athletic he is. We know how competitive that family of football players is. And I think he's a guy that if he has a great year and you have two tight ends that can make it happen all over the field, that makes you so lethal, especially with the other receivers that Texas A&M will have around him. I just think that guy could really take this receiving group to even a higher level because we know the known commodities. We think we know what Noah Thomas is about to do. What can that second tight end do? We know what we're going to get out of Max Wright. We know what we're going to get out of Donovan. But can that second serious receiving threat develop and really make this offense that much more dynamic? I really want to see that, and I think that can make this team a lot better. All right, other side of the ball, in a major position group of need for 4 or 5 years and counting, the linebacker group, it's been a major area of concern for Texas A&M, at least in the talent acquisition aspect, because you've had players kind of rise up within, like Buddy Johnson. Hansford made a little career out of his maybe humble beginnings as an Aggie. Edgerrin Cooper, that's the name I wanted to highlight here because he's going to be getting a majority of the reps there, him and Chris Russell, but mainly him. He's the guy that I thought had star potential in that linebacker position after what we saw from him 2 years ago. I really thought he had a major leap in the chamber last year. It didn't pan out like that. He had a decent year, but it wasn't what we thought it could be. And maybe youth up front played a role there because a lot of times you need some really strong D-line play for linebackers to really show their talent. He's probably going to get that this year. So this year is a huge opportunity for Edgerrin Cooper to not only make a name for himself and raising his stock at the next level, but taking this defense to the next level because we know what the D-line and the safeties are and will be more than likely. If you can get that second level honed in and get a star from within there, from a known commodity, from a known voice in the locker room, a known presence and personality, that takes this team up a notch. So if you can get that star leap from Edgerrin Cooper that I've kind of been anticipating for a couple of years now, I think this defense can be really, really good. And that's one of the areas that kind of has a higher variance. The linebackers and maybe the cornerback depth. So if you can get your known guy to do that, it's huge. Okay, and sticking with defense, Tyreek Chappell. He has had Jalen Jones, perhaps the most NFL-ready body we had on the defense relative to position last year. Jalen Jones was huge. He was jacked. He could handle physical receivers. He could handle deep threats. He could handle shorter routes. He was just a very mature, physical corner. Now Tyreek Chappell is stepping into that old reliable slot, cornerback one, the one you need to prevent the top from being taken off against some of the best receivers in the country. You're going to see those guys in the SEC. He's guarding the best one or two receivers on every team that A&M plays. So it's a major responsibility shift. It's been a few years of seeing him play, and he's gotten better and better, but he's not really had that number one duty for an extended period of time. I mean, there have been times where Jalen was out last year where he did take that responsibility, but he's going into it this year. He is the guy. I think this guy has a huge swing of money he could make with a good performance this year at the next level. So he's a guy to look out for. This cornerback room, the depth behind him, and we think Tony Grimes is the other starter, but we don't know yet. I'm pretty confident a second guy will emerge and some quality depth will be there. But that primary guy, it has to be Tyreek Chappell, and he has to have a strong season. You know, he can stay the course, and the team will be pretty good. The defense will be pretty good with that. But if he takes that next level, you really kind of need him to take that next level for this defense to really reach its potential, because you've lost that number one guy, and he's the guy now. So he's had the career that can take him to that point. 3 years of playing, 3 years of starting, I think. I think he started his first game versus Arkansas a few years back, and he's kind of been in the rotation ever since. He's definitely started the last 2 years. How does he handle that responsibility? He's a huge swing player on this team, I think. And finally, to round out the list of guys that need to have good years for Texas A&M to see its full potential, Demani Richardson. I called for this last year. I said that as a freshman, we had super high hopes for Demani. Thought he could be like a 3-year and done kind of guy with his physical nature, his body, and how good his freshman year was. And though he has gotten better over the years, he hasn't really taken that leap. And last year, I thought he had a leap in the chamber. He really didn't make it, but he still has a chance to do it because he's on his 20th year of eligibility, and it's going to be his last year. So he's going to also have a bigger leadership role this year with Antonio and Jalen Jones moving on. So there's a lot of responsibility on Demani, the leadership role, and hopefully him taking that next step, because he's going to be in on pretty much every play. And that's a young safety room. They have a year of experience, most of the guys that are going to be playing, but he's by far the most grizzled leader. So where is Demani at? Does he have the leap yet left? Because he's a guy that whole room's going to lean on this year. That whole secondary and defense even is going to lean on this guy. So calling on a bunch of known commodities today, really, now that I look back at it, we know what Bryce Foster is. We know what Jake Johnson is. I think he's probably the most unknown of the group of guys I mentioned. We know what Tyreek Chappell is. We know what Edgerrin Cooper is. We know what Demani is. So basically, we're calling on these leaders who have been around but really need to take that next leap. Because last year we didn't see it. We relied a lot on the younger guys, understandably so with the injuries and the way the roster shook out. But I guess I'm calling on some of these older guys, some of these upperclassmen, to really take on that leadership role, to really set an example this year. I did not expect that when I was coming up with this list, but as I look at it now, these are the guys that we really need to see pan out this year. I think we're very confident. I mean, it's apparent that we're confident in that sophomore class, that 2022 class, or that 2021 class. No, 2022. See, I always do that. We're very confident in that 2022 class, but the pieces around them, the leaders, the players who are expected to take that leap, it's time for that to happen. Who did I miss? And who am I maybe making too much about? Are any of these guys maybe I'm making much ado about nothing? I think these are all really, really important players. And as I said at the beginning of this video, every player on a team is important, but I think these are guys that can swing the year. So give me any names that I maybe missed in this department. I'm not talking about players that we know are going to have a good year. Like, I know Anias is going to have a good year. I know Evan Stewart's going to take a step. I'm very confident whichever quarterback is the starter, we think it's Connor, is going to have a solid performance in their season. So give me some names. I'll see you on the next one. Subscribe if you haven't already, please. I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers by the start of the season. That is the goal. So if you could just tell one friend about this show, that would help me greatly and bring more Aggies together to get hyped and hopefully not be let down again with Aggie football. So I'll see you in the next one, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Gig 'em.